What's happening, people? Today's guest is Dr. and Chef Nof Atamna-Ismaeel. She first made headlines in 2014 when she became the first Arab contestant to win MasterChef Israel. This, of course, she achieved after already becoming a Micro Marine Biologist. She founded the A-Sham Arab Food Festival in Haifa that pairs Arab and Jewish chefs to recreate lost dishes from the past. You can find her as a host or at the center of a number of cooking shows and documentaries. This lady's an ultra badass, guys. I mean, she had the choice of giving into fear and not pursuing her dreams. So what we get in today is why you should always trust your intuition if you want to achieve big things, how to instantly become a better cook, and of course, the tensions surrounding the conflict in the Middle East. Enjoy the podcast.
The Way of Will John.
Dr. Nof Atamna, thank you for being here. How are you?
Thank you for inviting me. I'm feeling great. Thank you.
That's good. So why don't you tell us how a Micro Marine Biologist goes on to then win MasterChef and also do everything that you're doing now? How do we get here?
Wow. So I need to start very early in life. Is that okay? Do you have time?
Yeah, we have time to figure out how you did this. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So I think since I can remember myself when I was a little girl, I used to be with my grandmothers because my mom, she was a career woman. So most of my time was hanging out with my grandmothers who, grandmothers, they express their love, by hugging you, kissing you, and feeding you. It's very simple. And I saw how much love they put into food and how much food is important for them and how much giving is in this process of making food, that I really fell in love with it. And I knew from a very small age that this is what I want to do when I grow old. And I was a very good student in school. So when I, finished high school and I had this talk with my parents about what I'm planning to do or to be. And, I come from a family where my father, he was a respiratory system doctor, and my mom, she was a school principal. So for them, me coming and saying that I want to become a chef was actually, I think, one of the biggest disasters that happened to them in life, because to tell you the truth, they were expecting that their daughter, she's going to be, she's going to go in school to university. So they said to me, well, your grades are very high and it would be such a shame that you would go and do something else like cooking. So maybe you should do your first degree and then decide if you want to become a chef or not. So I compromised. We decided that I'm going to do my first degree and then we'll see what happens from there. And then when I finished my first degree in biology in Tel Aviv University, I got a scholarship for a master's degree. And then I said, but I want to become a chef. And they said, well, you got a scholarship, it would be such a shame. So maybe you can just do your master's and then you can, go and pursue your dream of becoming a chef. So I said, well, fine, master's degree is not that long. I will do it. And then I will become a chef. So when I finished my master's degree, guess what? I got a scholarship for a PhD. So they said, well, it's your shot.
Your parents are brilliant. The long game. They are patient. This is super smart. Taking notes.
Yeah. And they said, well, PhD, it's only 4 years. And then, what is 4 years in a lifetime? And you should do that. And so I went and I did my PhD. And to make a long story short, because I did then one postdoc after another. So when I reached my fourth postdoc, I was coming back home from, my work in the lab. And my husband, it was very late in the evening and he was watching MasterChef. And I went immediately to the kitchen because it was my place to relax. After a very long day, some people like to, I don't know, chill on the couch. I like to cook. So I went into the kitchen and I can see him like watching TV, and he goes like, look at these people. You can do much better than they are doing. And you should go there. You will win for sure. And, I'm telling him, well, you're saying this because I'm your wife. And he said, no, you should try it, And then, it just takes one sentence that can change your life forever. So while I was cooking, I was thinking to myself, when it's going to be the right time, when I'm going to do finally what I really want to do. Okay, I'm smart. I know this, I have all my degrees, but my heart is somewhere else. This is what I want to do in life. So the following day, I took whatever I cooked in the evening to my lab. And my professor, we were working on this very important paper for Nature magazine, which is a very big deal, in the scientific world. And I come to the lab, and the first thing he asked me is like, what do you have in your lunchbox today? And I was looking at him like, are you serious? We're working on this paper for Nature magazine, and all your concern is what I have in my lunchbox. So he says, no, to tell you the truth, I think you're wasting your time and future here.
Wow.
It was a very strange thing to say to someone who's a postdoc in your lab, working on a paper for Nature, which is, one of the best science magazines. And I said, what do you think I should do? And he said, you have to cook. So that's it, combining what happened the night before with my husband and my professor the following day, I decided that I'm going to just, sign up for MasterChef. Then we'll see what happens. If I win, then it's a sign from, I don't know, above that I should leave science. And this is what I did. I was doing my experiment that day. I put my bacteria into incubation, and I went to my bench and I just filled up the form and I applied for MasterChef. And it was in 2014. And I won.
That's insane, especially as a story. I mean, because you're one of those rare stories where, and I think this is I would actually call it an epidemic in a sense across society at large. You were being called to cook forever, and like you said, it was a childhood thing. And no matter how long, and your parents with their right intentions of wanting to keep you get a good job, make sure you're taken care of, make sure our daughter has what she needs to survive in the world, which is there. But at the same time, it's never, ever going to squash the inner call that someone has. And I think there's an epidemic in society where a lot of people will be in a very similar situation, and they won't have a supportive spouse. They won't have supportive, people around them, and they might not ever do it. They might not ever do it. And there's still technically the danger that you might not have, had he not been watching MasterChef and maybe he had a bad day and was like, you're good, but it's not that good. And then the guy comes and, this is not that good. Who knows what would have pushed you towards that and delayed it another 10 years, 20 years. It's like, it's never too late. But I don't think everybody understands that your true happiness, I can only imagine now you must be infinitely more happier than you were before, right? And so, okay. So
you want to do, good, whatever I do. It doesn't matter if I'm doing science or food.
Yeah.
So actually it's just some people choose sometimes to ignore the signs they get from life. And I really did not want to reach the point when I'm 60 or 70, if I'll reach 70. So lying on the couch thinking, but I did all my life what society expected me to do and not what I really wanted to do. And, we get only one chance and one cycle of life here, I guess. So you we better make the best of it. And happiness is the key. I'm sorry, it sounds like a cliche, but if you're doing what your heart really likes and loves, then everyone who's surrounding you will feel this. And you will be a much positive person.
Yeah. And you'll have more influence on the world. I think people that are doing the thing that they're supposed to be doing, number one, it's easier when things get hard because you don't mind, right? I'll throw a hypothetical question to you. What would have happened if you failed on your first MasterChef attempt?
Wow. This is a very hard question. I'm a very stubborn person. So, I mean, I would interpret the signs the way I want them. So I would say maybe it's not the right time for me. Maybe I should finish my Nature magazine thingy and then I should apply again. So I don't think that if your heart really knows what it's supposed to do, then any negative sign that will come across you, then you will not interpret it as stop trying.
Sure. Yeah.
It will be, maybe it's not the right timing. Maybe I should wait a little bit. Maybe I should study more, learn more about food, and then try.
That's a huge point, because I think we in our all of our YouTube channels, we deal with a lot of young men, right, who are trying to be better at sports, get faster, get stronger, get better at soccer, and part of the things that we convey to them is because they look at the world's biggest stars in any sport, LeBron James, Messi, Ronaldo, whoever it is that they're looking at, and you see the finished product of them winning a World Cup or them, whatever, running at the Olympics and all this stuff. And you never ever get to see the amount of times that they missed shots, missed goals, were told that they were bad, told that they were never, ever, ever going to play on this team. You will never do. The amount of times that I've seen coaches and people and say things like, this person will never, 100%, never, ever be good at this. Wait a year, you wait 2 years, hey, there they are. It's like, what happened? And so that's one of those things in life that it's pretty funny, because you go to school, right? And you had a lot of extended schooling, and they don't teach you about what it's like across the path of success. Everybody wants it to be easy. You kind of want a little bit of setback, and that way you get stronger. That way you get focused. That way you get all the qualities and tools that you actually need. But not enough people talk about the fact that if you fail once, it really doesn't mean anything. It means as long as you look at it and figure out what you can learn from it, that's the best thing. But it doesn't really mean you shouldn't be a chef. So after you won, what was the next challenge? Like, what did you start to do? Because you're very busy, I can see. You just have to Google your name or YouTube you, and we'll see that you've been busy. But what was the next mountain to climb?
Well, after winning MasterChef, during the competition itself, it was very important to me, coming from an Arabic, Muslim, Palestinian, Israeli background, to bring all my, food culture into the big screen. So the food that usually was kept hidden in homes because it was considered like, like very simple food with not so expensive ingredients, which I love this food, by the way. I think, when you talk about soul food in America, you understand it's the tastiest food. It's what I cook today, actually, mac and cheese for my kids.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
So it's the tastiest food, I guess. But, the ingredients are very simple, and it's usually kept in homes by all the grandmothers, not written, not well documented, because it's like passing, from generation to generation orally. So what I did actually is just to take these recipes, first of all, writing them down, trying to, my scientific background, actually my parents were right. Because my scientific background really helped me in doing all the measurements, and being a scientist is very similar to being a chef, because both personalities needs to be precise and needs to be, very creative and thinking out of the box and simplifying things. So it was really helpful having my scientific background into taking these recipes and just documenting everything, calculating weights and stuff. And then teaching, the people around. So I teach in cooking schools and I do private cooking classes. And then I have my Instagram and Facebook where I teach people how to cook Arabic food. And then taking these recipes and taking this heritage and actually documenting and sharing it with the world was something that was really close to my heart and very important.
Sure. Sure.
And rescuing many recipes that were about to, disappear from this world simply because they contain, like simple ingredients.
Tell me about this. Because that's like something I've never even really heard of, the idea that certain foods, and I guess it obviously makes sense, but when we talk about things that are going extinct, obviously we talk about animals. That's the first thing that comes to everybody's head. But when you imagine that there are probably things that people can make, dishes that people can make, and that certain cultures and societies are making that will die off as people either don't pass them, to people. So what sort of things are you keeping alive? Or
well, they're mostly recipes that I'm talking about mainly Palestinian recipes because this is the cuisine I grew up on. So they're mainly dishes that contain lentils, chickpeas, wheat, very simple, no meat, no nuts, no expensive ingredients, very simple recipe. I'll give you an example. For instance, there is a dish called 𝗪𝗚𝗟𝗡, which is, I hopefully, I can say it again. It's 𝗪𝗚𝗡, which is very simple. It's like, it's very simple to pasta dish because you take the flour and you make like a dough and then some kind of a noodle, and then you cook the you cook the lentils, and then you combine them together. So it's very simple ingredients, a lot of fried onions, olive oil. Very tasty dish, but it's usually people, used to make this back like 100 years ago or a little bit more. And now people are not making it because it's maybe a lot of effort, making the noodles, making the lentils, making everything. And because it is very simple ingredients and people want to forget those times when they didn't have money. They only had like flour, lentils, and onions, and they don't want to remember those periods. And I think remembering those periods is very, very important because those periods were the trickiest to cook because you didn't have this beautiful pantry with millions of ingredients. You had like 10 ingredients and you had to feed your family for weeks, months, and be creative with only 10 things.
Yeah.
And they were much smarter, I guess, than us. So I use that creativity of making something from nothing into modern cuisine because it's a very good thing or good base for you to become a better chef if you learn how those people used to cook.
That is a principle that I think it is worth noting, that when you have these limits and constrictions on yourself, and I see that in the way that we produce content, whereas a lot of our competitors have millions and millions of dollars. These massive companies, Nike and these ProDirect, they have millions of dollars and they have these big studio shoots and stuff. And when we started our channel, we come out with we have to put our tripod is like a bunch of boxes and broom. We got to figure out how to get this thing to run across. You got strings and tape, and it's a disaster. But what comes out of it is a million times more creative when you can solve issues with money and more options and this and this and that. So I can completely see the same thing happening with if you say, hey, you got to make me an amazing dish. Actually, as a matter of fact, you need to make 3 different meals. you only have 3 ingredients. I need you to make me something. And how that really forces you to be, creative. And so that's what leads me to my next question, which is going to be, I mean, I can cook. I like to consider myself, and I'm not going to dare call myself a chef in front of a master chef, but I like to cook, and I enjoy it. But there's always something that you can learn. You, given the level that you've achieved now as a chef, if you had to give us normies advice on 3 to 5 things that would make us a better cook, could you somewhat generalize those into simple points for us?
3, 4, 5.
Sure. I mean, if you have more, listen, I'm all about becoming the next greatest. If you can teach me how to win MasterChef,
Well,
I'll do it.
I'll tell you something. My first advice, and I really honestly believe in this, and it's not something, new to anyone, but it is the point that leads my cooking for years, is first of all to use good products. Like high quality products are the most important thing to get good results at the end, because you can be an amazing chef, but if you have poor quality fish or poor quality meat, then the end result will not be as good. And I'm not saying you need this expensive cuts, okay? No, I'm saying it's just the quality, the freshness of the vegetables. It doesn't matter if it's like an expensive vegetables or a very simple, very a low cost vegetable. The quality, the freshness of the ingredients is the most important thing to get really good results. The second thing is just don't be afraid. Some people, I see them when they enter the kitchen, they're like panicking. So, I can't understand this, because being a scientist, we used to fail. We are used to fail because we do like 10,000 experiments until this one experiment works. Okay. So don't be afraid, and you're allowed to fail, and it's okay. The biggest scientists in the world, they failed so many times, and then, this one time they did it and it was perfect and it changed our lives. So don't panic, just go, and if it turns out good, then fine. If it doesn't and it's not edible, just put it in the garbage. It's okay, and try again.
Right.
So it's very important. For me, I think that having I don't believe in having a good spices pantry is very important in your house, because even making like the simple thing like I don't know, boiled potato, and then you put the right spices, then you can make it something dreamy. So having spices and fresh spices, and try to grind your own spices immediately before use. It's better than buying those that are already ground, like from last year or 2 years before, because they're not fresh. I think that's it.
Okay. Those are incredibly important, just due to the fact that we start from with the amount of information about things that are out there. It's always interesting to hear from people that are at the top of their game, what they think about, and how a lot of times the things that they actually say are very simple, and they're like, it's the technical simple parts, not necessarily the complex things that are going to make something exquisite. And with that being said, do you have a absolute favorite dish? Is that possible to have a favorite?
Oh my God. No. It's impossible. I mean, it's very hard for me even to answer a more general question, like what is your favorite cuisine? Because, obviously the cuisine I was raised on is my favorite, but then, there are a few other favorite cuisines. and few dishes that I love. So, I mean, I can't answer this. I'm so sorry. It's like asking me which one of my kids I love more.
Exactly. Well, you know what? It's funny. And I only ask this question because I get the same question all the time. People will ask me, who's your favorite soccer player? I'm like, how many soccer players? I grew up watching all these people, and there's always a new thing to learn and always a new star to do this and that. I'm like, who? Then they'll ask, who's your favorite team? You know how many different teams my favorite players have played on and all this? I can't, apart from, where I grew up, I can tell you, the team from my hometown is, I got to play for them. That's something of a favorite, but that doesn't really count. So yeah, it's kind of funny because I get the same exact general question and I never know how to really answer it. It's always completely, I always end up being frustrated by the answer that I give. But going on from that, I've seen also a lot of in your videos, obviously, because of where you grew up and the type of food that you cook. Tell me a little bit more about the obviously the conflict between Israel and Palestine. I've seen some of the things that you've touched on and what you've wanted to do with food, and to open and break down barriers and get conversation started, and kind of how food has this general. And I've seen a lot of guys that have had. We had a guy who's just been to about 100 countries. And one of the things that he did is that he started, it was just travel. And then food had to be a part of it, because how can you keep food out of the travel aspect of things? And that was also a way for him to tell a story. And so I'm curious, and I've seen you touch on it, but between the whole conflict and the things that are going on, how has what you've done, how does that play a role? How does food play a role essentially in this conflict and things going on? And how do you see that?
Wow, you touched such a complicated issue and question. It's way more complicated than I can explain it. Because you have to live it, so you can understand it better. But I want to tell you that yesterday I was watching. Okay, let's go from there. Yesterday I was watching Netflix, and I was watching this new series about Americans street food, and the series was very interesting because they were talking to basically immigrants, and how immigrants and how different layers of the American society built up their place and reputation because of food. They are, one of the characters actually said, "We are seen through food," okay? Which is a very strong saying. And food was always in any country, in any place, is the best tool to be seen, best tool to bring people together. It has actually, this is what made me fall in love with the whole concept of making food is how much my grandmothers possessed power because they were the people who cooked. The power that comes with you feeding people. It's not like a negative power. It's not power over
no, of course
control.
Not. Yeah.
It's just give me a better word than power, because I don't feel comfortable.
It is power. It is power. It's essence. And there's a way of transferring love, care, creativity, and all this stuff that comes within food. And it's funny because people will, we will, in our current society, we will belittle a lot of the what we want to call small things, right? Everybody eats every day. A lot of people just shove the food in their mouth and they get back to doing what they're doing. And when you stop to have a good meal, like you said, with someone who's decided to find the best ingredients, to find the best ways to cook it, and to do all this stuff, that is an essence. There's a transfer of power, and that comes from care. I think that really comes from thought energy and that sort of push. So I'm right there with you. I completely understand what you mean, but go ahead.
So the food can really help you. We're living in a very crazy situation here. You said conflict, but conflict is something, it's not a very, I know that many people refer to it as a conflict, but actually, there is a lot of moments that there is no conflict because we're just living the everyday life. and life is much stronger. And sometimes, yes, you feel the conflict, you feel the politics, you feel the I can't find the words to
the issues.
describe
Yeah,
it.
definitely. I know what you mean.
Food
Yeah.
somehow is above all this. It's above all this, and it is actually the best way to ignore all this because of the power that it possesses on people. The same example I can give you is when my grandmother is really angry at me or at my mother, but then she cooks something and we go like, walking to her like, please, I'm sorry, just give me some of this. So
yeah,
same with food. Is somehow, if you're smart enough, take this food and not just shove it in your mouth, like you said, or just to stop and, feel it, feel all the dimensions that it has, then you can convey a lot of messages to the person that sits next to you, that you're feeding.
Mm.
And I think that I was trying deliberately or not deliberately. I'm not sure. Maybe it's my subconscious. But then for me, food was always a way to bind people, just like my grandmother, to bring people together. And yeah, like,
yeah,
I'm telling you what I do. I feel that it has a lot of positive impact on people surrounding me. It doesn't matter if they're Israelis or Palestinians. They're all liking what I do from different maybe perspectives, but they all love what I'm doing.
Sure.
And they can find somehow themselves in these recipes.
And I mean, obviously it's an old cliche, and obviously and I'm not sure if this is a project, but you have a project is it called Breaking Bread?
Yeah, it's a movie. It's a documentary movie that there was a festival that I used to have in Haifa city, which is an Arabic food festival where Jewish and Arab chefs collaborated in this festival to make Arabic dishes. And this documentary was showing exactly, the real everyday life, because people go to restaurants, eat, cook together. All the kitchens here are mixed between Jewish and Arab chefs, and everyday life. This is what I say. Everyday life is much stronger than keeping ourselves in the conflict idea.
Sure. Yeah. And I saw a trailer from the documentary where one of the guys mentioned that it's essentially not the everyday person who has this issue with the other, whether they're Palestinian or Jewish. They're not. There's a small portion, whether they're people in power or whether they're extremists to a certain extent, that have ulterior motives or reason for wanting to control or to continue the issues that could be exploited on both sides. The other large majority of people, like you said, just they work together, they eat together, they wanna enjoy life together. They don't have any issues like that, whether they're religion or intellectually, if they have any issues or whatever it is. And so, I found that really interesting because, especially as an outsider, someone who's I've obviously been there, and that was an eye opener to me, just to know that there's Arab neighborhoods in Israel. There's there's Jews living in this. So there's a whole mix. I didn't understand the diversity that was actually happening there, because obviously on the outside, all you hear is a CNN or a Fox News headline and title, like you said, that has put people on one side and the other people on the other side, right? It's a simplistic way to view the world, and that's all we're kind of force-fed, unless you do your own digging.
Well, who wants to hear positive news?
This is, yeah.
Maybe we should start our own channel of positive news.
Hey, that's a great idea. That's actually a great idea, because I tell you what, as much as we joke, I bet you everybody would start to turn to that. I mean, it is a weird thing, right? That we live in the world where I honestly just the other day saw, like, I was going to name something. We have some stuff on TikTok, and I went to Snapchat to go repost the thing, and on the front page of there is the news, like the daily news, I think from the UK. Everything was negative. It's as if at every moment on the news, it's as if the world is literally ending. It's the apocalypse. It must be the end of the world. And there's no positive news. And if there was a news station, I mean, we joke, but it would be funny because, like, yes, there are negative things happening in the world and there are positive things, but the overwhelming majority of Earth is clearly positive. It is clearly, I understand there are issues, but it is overwhelmingly positive on Earth, despite any of the issues. It's just the negative stuff does get a lot of attention. Do you have your own restaurant or restaurants, or is that a plan, or do you?
No,
is that something that's going to happen?
And I'm really happy that I don't for now. I mean,
okay.
I got a lot of offers of opening my own restaurant, but then you know, I consider myself very young because although I'm 40, I'm in the field of cooking now 7 years. And I really want to try to make best of this time and not to commit into one thing only, because as you know, opening a restaurant is something that it's like marriage. You have to be there all the time in order to make it successful, and you can't do any other things. It's your only project. And for now, for me, I don't think that it's the right timing. I mean, yes, I would love to have a restaurant one day, but I think I would pass on it for now because there are other things that I think that I want to do now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. I'm curious also, what do you think of these well-known super chef type things? What does somebody from your position like think of somebody like Gordon Ramsay, or I don't know who's that, Jamie Oliver? These are the UK guys. I can't even name some of the other famous ones. But what do you think of those people as and are they? I actually have a lot of questions in the chef world. But what do you think of those people? First, I'll just start there.
First of all, I admire both of them and any other celebrity chef that there is in the world, because I think these people made a very big change in how people perceive chefs in the world. I mean, from being a chef, which is like, you know, some kind of a job that people do, they turned it into like a celebrity thing. I don't think that Gordon Ramsay is any less, you know, famous, or, you know, people admire him less than, you know, people who admire Beyonce. So like being a musician or being a chef is almost has the same weight now, which is amazing. And so they made people like me, when they leave, you know, the scientific world and go into the cooking world, it's not so crazy because, you know, you can reach very high achievements if you become a chef. So I admire them and I hope to meet them one day. So if they hear us.
Okay. Collab. All right. You listen, if I am somehow involved in getting you guys to meet, just as long as I can eat I'm crazy about food too. It's funny, as an athlete, I will end some of our videos, because when we shoot videos, we'll do a lot of them, because I have to train and have to do stuff. So we'll shoot on like a one day, we'll shoot a lot of videos. And during that time, I might not eat for a long period of time. So it's really funny, on a lot of the videos, at the very end of a lot of them, I'm like, all right, guys, I have to go eat. Or what did you eat? I'm always talking about food. It's really funny.
What is your favorite food?
Oof.
You have to give me,
well, you know what?
Maybe a category.
I can give you, I have to give you a few because it's just impossible. So my father's from Nigeria. He cooks Nigerian food.
Wow.
It's absolutely unbelievable, and I love it. And I would say
Fufu Nigerian, right? Fufu?
Fufu's Nigerian. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's so much. There's so much. I mean, every culture has such a rich, when you really get deep into it, there's obviously so much you can get into. And Nigerian, I would say Italian food makes a whole lot of sense. I love a lot of the sauces, a lot of stuff. I have a really interesting connection with Italy. And I learned Italian. I've only spent a week in Italy, but I just have this really deep connection with the country and the culture and stuff like that. Then I would definitely say on the Asian food side, Thai food is. I mean, I have once traveled to another country just to go get Thai food on a day. We drove for hours. A friend of mine, just to go get Thai food because they didn't have it, and we just were craving it because we hadn't had it for months. So I would probably say those three are where you would find my more or less favorites. But it's not. I'll eat almost anything. I'll try almost anything now at this point. So
wow, Thai food is actually also my favorite. I mean, if I had to choose, then my Arabic culture, cuisine, and then Thai food. I am crazy about Thai food.
It's so good,
so good.
Especially also because it's so cheap. Especially, I mean, I don't know. Have you been to Thailand?
Not yet, because I and now we're coming to talk about the thing that I can't stand: long distance flights.
Oh no!
And
okay.
I'm waiting for humans to finally find a solution how we can travel from Israel to Thailand in 2 hours.
Well, I tell you what. We have another podcast where we constantly are pushing the aviation industry to allow some of what would be. I think that they actually have the way to do that. It's tied up in what would be military applications, those sort of propulsion systems and things that could actually get you from there to there. They're tied up in the military, so we don't get them as average citizens. So we don't get to travel from like New York to London or something like this in an hour. But the fact that you can't travel on long flights, I just talked to somebody about that, and they had to take a boat across the Atlantic. I don't know if they did it as a cruise, like around. They had to stop. I don't know if they went to South America, and then from South America to somewhere else, and then to Europe. So have you never flown or?
No, I fly a lot, but like, I went to Japan. I can say I went to Japan, which is like the farthest thing. But I don't want to share with you how I went to Japan and how many pills I took to get to Japan. Because it's like, I get really bored, and then I get really nervous, and I just want to, I'm a very energetic person, and sitting still in your seat for like 13 hours is just not my thing.
I know. I mean, I've done those flights too. I've done South Korea twice, and I've done Japan, and they were, 13, 16 hours one of them was. And it's just like, whoa, this is crazy. It's crazy. And then the jet lag on one of them had me making, one of the times when I came back from South Korea, I flew back to Kansas City, and instead of readjusting myself, I just said, screw it. I'm not doing it. And so at like 3 a.m, I would be making dinner, and for the first like 2 or 3 days, I just did not care about it. I'm going to sleep in the daytime. I don't care. I'm tired. And I would just get up in the middle of the night, which was day for me. And I would make food and live my life until I finally had to convert back to, proper, the proper circadian rhythm. But what about I have a question that's actually dealing with how you get better, because you took all this time, you did all this studying within your science, the arena of science. And now as a chef, how do you actually get better? Like, how do you push yourself to make sure that you're not just making the same old dishes and trying to do this? Like, how does a chef actually improve? Because you can never stop learning, right?
I think different chefs improve differently. So I'm going to tell you how I improve myself. Because for me, learning everything, it doesn't matter if it's coming from my cuisine or from any other cuisines, is an inspiration, and it's the way how you become more creative. And I mean, you can learn basically from any culture, from any person, from any place in the world. Some people would say, if you want to get better, you have to go to France and, learn from there. But I'm saying, well, for me, learning also from a grandmother in Kenya was very, crazy for me, because I learned so many things, that different techniques, they're all techniques. It doesn't matter if it's coming from Kenya or from France or, and they all have some way to inspire me into improving my cooking. So, for me, the most important thing is to remember that I can learn from anyone. And I don't need like these fancy chefs, in France. Like, I would love to go there. But I mean, they're not the only people who can inspire me and teach me stuff. Because this grandmother, like I said, in Kenya inspired me. And the other grandmother in Japan, in some small village, inspired me. So really, it's a combination of people and different classes. And I love home cooking. I love learning from old people, because they actually cook in a very relaxed way that makes food taste very good. Because I remember my grandmother, when she used to cook, she was never in a hurry. If she was in a hurry, then she wouldn't cook. Because cooking, she said, it's like a process, and food feels you. Food feels you. And if you're in a hurry and you're just dumping things into the pot, it will not be tasty. Go. Don't cook. But if you're coming and you're entering the kitchen, come with a lot of thought and a lot of, be relaxed. So actually, I'm inspired from this philosophy, from books, a lot of history, a lot of, different books. It can be stories that were written in the 10th century that can inspire me. And then, TV shows, everywhere you can find inspiration. It's just a matter of opening your eyes, because I'm sure maybe you can relate to what I'm saying, because sometimes if you watch little kids play football, maybe in the neighborhood, you can find a lot of inspiration, right?
It's exactly that. I mean, it's something that, as a matter of fact, this is the reason why we have this podcast. And it's the reason why I seek out people like you. There's the general consensus, of course, that an athlete is dumb, doesn't really care about the world, doesn't have to care about the world, because, they're good at a sport. And I've always been completely and incredibly curious about the world, about other cultures, about what I can learn from virtually everyone. I agree with you on that statement as well. If you're not looking at someone else, regardless of where their IQ is, how they see the world is a little glimpse for you into a different perspective that can give you, a new outlook. And so, yeah, it's like you can see some stuff. And I would coach camps, and you see some kids who they go for things. They don't have any abandon, this no fear type of thing in them. It's like when you can bring that to your own game or to your life, you've got a whole different world, and so it's that mentality that actually I'm also curious about when you are winning something like MasterChef, because tell me what it's like to actually have that mentality. There has to be a certain level of focus, right? It's rare that in your profession, to a certain extent, that you're competing. And so how did that change you? How did you keep your focus there? How do you approach a meal when you're trying to win? Like, what is the difference there? Or did you even just not even think about it?
No, come on. I am, how you say it, a geek. So we don't do these things, you know, we study a lot. So, you know, maybe I'm a chef, but I'm a former scientist. So
there you go.
We study for everything. And it's like you practice for everything, right? So for me, going to MasterChef was very simple because I went and I watched all seasons.
Okay.
Then I tried to find a pattern. It's very similar to football because you analyze the episodes and then you say, okay, in every season there is like a dish that is you learn from either your mother, grandmother, it doesn't matter, you know, but someone from your family. So it's like a mission that you see every episode, every season, every year. It's just repeating itself in a different definition. So I said, okay, this is one. And then I watched more. And then I saw like something that has to do with the fish, you know, some kind of, doesn't matter, you know, the precise definition of the chapter or of the episode, but then, you know that we will have something to do with fish. So I opened my computer and my Excel sheets like a perfect scientist. And I started writing.
Wow.
Okay, so what if they give us, you know, a dish that has fish in it and I have to prepare it in 30 minutes? Then what I would cook. And then what would I do? Like I started creating this hypothetical, you know, they're based on a survey I made on, you know, former seasons, but then I had to be also creative and hypothesize like what would they do and what things they can make us, you know, cook there. And then I made charts of what ingredients go with what ingredients. So like potatoes go well with this, but they don't go well with this. So I can memorize everything. And then I memorized the ratios of different doughs. Like there's like the ratio of water and flour and, you know, fat in different doughs.
Wow.
And actually, yeah, I made a lot of homework, but it's something that I like because I'm a scientist. And I memorized everything to minimize the risk when I go there because I really wanted to win. And I wanted to minimize the risk. So, you know, you practice before a game. It's same like me. You know, I went and I know that I'm not good in fish dishes. So the first thing I did was going to Faradis, which is a town up north by the sea. And I bought like a box filled with fish. and I said, okay, I put the box in my kitchen. And I said, no, you have to learn how to make perfect fillets from fish. So the first fish, you know, the first fillet was looking, okay, I won't describe it even. The second one also, the third one. And then, you know, when I reached the 10th one, okay, I got improved and I got better fillets. And, you know, my family suffered because for a whole month they had to eat fish because someone had to eat all those filleted fish in my freezer. But, you know, I faced my weaknesses. And I know that I'm weak in fish. So it's not that I'm gonna, you know, hide my head in the sand and think, okay, I'm sure they will not have, you know, anything to do with fish and we'll leave it to later. No, I said, okay, I have a problem here. And I'm facing this problem by buying this fish, going home and practice until everything is perfect. And guess what? In the finale, we had to fillet a fish.
No way.
And cook something from it. Yeah. So,
okay.
And I did it like a pro, you know. Nobody knew. Like 3 months ago, I didn't know how to fillet a fish.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Those are the stories. And that's what I'm talking about. That is that stuff that is so interesting because you had a choice, really. And I actually feel pretty dumb and naive to think that just because you're a chef, you can't prepare for, especially also prepare for something like MasterChef, where they're going to throw all sorts of things at you. But it's one of those cool things where and I've talked about this. It's funny because I mention it a lot, but I go back to it a lot. We had a chess grandmaster on, and we talked about the fact that deep analytical thinking, it isn't really the norm, right? And what you did in order to make sure, you said, I wanted to win. So you actually had a good look at yourself and were like, you know very well that you can't cook that fish all that well. And you just said, all right, well, what do I do about that? You go and you actually execute a plan to do it. And like you said, you failed consistently in the first few times before you actually got there. That theory, that principle, that the fact that is true, that you can start with something that you're definitely not good at for whatever reason. And if you just have the determination to say, you know what, I got to do this, and I'm going to do it regardless of if I fail. And so if we take things full circle, and I asked you, what would have happened if you failed MasterChef? I'm pretty sure the answer is you would have been back and you would have eventually won MasterChef, because someone with that sort of mentality and someone with that mindset of winning and that isn't bothered by failure, like what you learned by becoming a scientist, is just not going to give up. I don't know if it's possible for you to give up and quit on dream. People that actually take action steps towards their dreams, I don't think it's possible for them to truly quit. They get sidetracked. They might get setbacks, but I don't think they quit. And so I find that really, really, really interesting. What do you have coming up though, as far as projects and stuff like that, as we come here to an end? What's the next few things for you?
Well, there is a very cool project I will start very soon. I really can't talk about it, but
okay,
it's
you and Gordon Ramsay and Jamie Oliver
maybe.
Cooking food for footballers. Yeah, for me. Okay, cool.
Well, but it's gonna be like I'm working on taking my career from my country into the world somehow, and doing it in English. So I'm really excited for that. And the other things, I have the normal dreams, becoming a ballerina and a top model like everyone else.
Okay. Yeah. We'll link to everything, obviously, here that we've seen, or that I've already seen. You said you do classes and stuff like this. You do all that?
I do now. I teach cooking classes for professionals, like people who want to become chefs, in a cooking school in Tel Aviv. And then I go and I give private cooking classes, and I do catering, which is like the alternative of having a restaurant, but without actually being in a certain place all the time.
Sure.
And this is basically, and I'm posting recipes, continuing to share, beautiful recipes from my background, my heritage. And I'm basically just having a great time, and I'm so happy for this change. And I'm telling you the truth. Sometimes things happen for a reason. And this is like, before we finish, very important for me to say that many people ask me if I would have done it, other way. If I would have, if my parents agreed when I was 18 that this is what I want to do and become that. And I say, I don't want to change anything. And my path and the things that I went through during life, and me becoming a scientist, and then, leaving that and going to food, is actually what made me a better chef. And I think it's influenced me so much in life, and it made me look at recipes and food in a very complex way that, I don't think that I would have been better chef if I went straight, the classical way of finishing high school and going, directly for becoming a chef. I think being a scientist really helps you in seeing the complexity and of food and the dimensions it has. And I'm happy that, of all the failures that happened in life, because they actually shaped who I am today, and I'm really grateful for that.
That's it. Couldn't be more well said. I definitely have the same, and you never really know what's happening and why you failed at this one. But as long as you have that sort of look and that outlook on that, you can learn something from it, that it's going to bring you some sort of structure, strength, new skill, all that stuff. That sort of mentality is the same type of stuff that we try to get across to all the guys that are trying to learn stuff, whether that's in the football or the athletic, world, or just trying to do stuff, in their lives. So really, really cool. We will link to everything here. Thank you a whole ton for being here, and I'll have to get over there sometime to try some food. I really mean that too. I might just show up. Okay.
No, you're not scaring me.
Okay, yeah. I will be right outside your door with this massive bowl, being like, I'm ready. Just so yeah, I'm crazy like that. But yeah, thanks a lot, and we appreciate it. We'll do this again sometime.
Hopefully. Thank you. Good luck.